Good evening, everyone. Good evening. We will be getting started shortly. Welcome to night two of our emergency, all units, all community and partners briefing on all things that are happening regarding the budget fight on Capitol Hill in real time. Good evening. We ask that folks drop in the chat where you are streaming in or calling in from this evening. I see folks calling in from Louisville, Kentucky, Atlanta, Georgia is here in the chat. I see Henrico, Virginia, Georgia, Maryland, Delaware, the list coming in. I see California, Long Beach coming in this evening. We will get started shortly. Welcome to night two. We know many of you may have joined us last night, and we hope you brought some friends to join us this night tonight as we begin to go into all things what is happening on Capitol Hill as it relates to the budget fight. We will get started shortly. Good evening, everyone. All right, all right. As we see folks continuing to come into the call this evening, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Dominic Whitehead, Chief of Field for the NAACP, and we are excited this evening to host our second call. Our second call. Many of you joined us on yesterday or last evening for our emergency call on all things that are happening on Capitol Hill as it relates to Medicaid and Medicare cuts, SNAP benefit cuts, etc. And so this evening, want to continue to provide updates on what's happening, but most importantly, how each of you can get involved this evening and continue to get involved with the association with our call to actions and making sure that we are calling the United States Senate, your senators in your state, to ask them to vote no. Again, to ask them to vote no. Now, before we dive in this evening, a few small housekeeping rules as always. We're going to ask folks to utilize the Q&A chat box. As you have questions this evening, there will be a question and answer period. We have staff on the call this evening that will be answering questions in real time and live. And so we're asking folks to utilize the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your devices. It says Q&A. It has a question mark there for you to place your questions there. Use the chat box to continue to engage this evening. There's a lot of information that our team will be sharing this evening. So we want to make sure that folks receive all of the information. So you're going to see a few links from us this evening on how to get engaged and get involved. I know many of you are sharing all types of resources. We ask you to hold that a tad bit this evening and allow national staff to put many of our resources in for you all so you can see how we're getting involved, how we're asking you to get involved, how you can get the information, like many of the graphics that we need you all to share in real time. So make sure you see that throughout the chat box. Our team will be placing that in the chat box throughout the evening. We want you to continue to engage and be fired up in this moment, but we also want to make sure we're getting folks over the right information as well around that. So again, Q&A for all questions. Use the Q&A box. I promise you staff will be answering questions and there will be a Q&A period throughout tonight's call. And then engage with us in the chat box and just be mindful and make sure you look at all of our resources and tools that national staff that we placing in the chat box this evening. I'll stop there and I'll kick it over to our president and CEO, Mr. Derek Johnson, to give us some opening remarks and the meaning of this moment. President Johnson.
Thank you, Dominic, and thank all of you who are joining again tonight, and welcome to everyone who's joining new. This is an important moment for our democracy, for our country. And as many of you across the country serve as officers, members of our local units, and along with friends and partners, this is our opportunity to act. We're an advocacy organization. Our units across the country is a 501(c)(3)(4). And the reason why we are structured that way so we can have a voice in the formation of public policy so that we can meet our members, our congressional members, our Senate members where they are and express our concern, our view around policy considerations that's before them. And what we are witnessing now is a radical departure from the role of government. Many of the hard-won fights that we have had as a community, that individuals have had as Americans, will be stripped away if this bill is passed. Not only will it be stripped away, the expectations that we have all grown accustomed to will no longer be there. That if you depend for your healthcare needs on Medicaid, the cuts to Medicaid would be so drastic that even if your ailments are life-threatening, resources may not be there. If you serve this country with honor and you depend on veterans benefits, there's a strong likelihood that those benefits will be harder to access. If you live around or see people who are food insecure, SNAP benefit cuts would not provide to ensure we don't have hunger in this country at a level that existed prior to that important piece of legislation passed. And that's why we're doing this call. That in this moment, we have individuals considering the health of our society over they're undermining the health of our society and prioritizing the wealth of the most wealthiest individuals, not only in this country, but around the globe. And so last night, when we did this initial call, we had a tremendous response. And just some of the outcomes from last night calls over 6,500 people emailed your senators to express your concern and to say, vote no. Over 890 people made the calls today to tell senators to vote no. Last night, 700 people joined the Zoom and 1,500 was on YouTube. And at the end of the day, our voices matter in this moment. And let's be clear, we cannot allow the distractions move us away from the substantive conversation that's really taking place, and that is around that redesign of government. So we are convening these calls nightly so you are aware of the progress and you can leverage your voice. And so I hope that the information that's shared is something of value, because as leaders in your communities, people are going to be asking you, what should we be doing, what is taking place, and how we can participate. This gives that opportunity. So Dominic, I'm going to turn it back over to you and take it from there.
Thank you, President Johnson, for laying out that framework on this moment in time and what is happening when we're asking all of our members to do across the country in terms of engaging us. I will now introduce Phaedra Jackson, Vice President of Advocacy and Unit Effectiveness, to lean in and give us a refresher on what we've been doing in this moment, because we know NAACP is not new to this in this moment, but we are truly true to this when it comes to this work. So, VP Jackson, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dominic, and good evening, leaders and allies. So we wanted to talk about, yes, meeting this moment, but we wanted to talk about the arc of engagement and how we have been battling for this fight for budget and justice, right? You will hear us talk about the fight as American As and how we want to defend our safety net and protect our communities. So let's talk a little bit about our campaign. You all, if you've been on our previous calls, you've heard us talk about the As American As campaign as framing the fight to protect Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP, Pell Grants, and public education as a defense of what is fundamentally American. We think about those things like apple pie and football. Those are great cultural touch points, but what's truly a part of our American values is taking care of one another. And what that looks like is making sure folks can go to college and that hungry children have assistance to be fed and that our seniors who have worked their whole life have safety and security in their retirement. And so this is rooted in racial and economic justice. This campaign mobilizes Black communities and its allies to resist 4.5 trillion in proposed federal tax cuts that would devastate vital safety net programs. And our goals for this program and this campaign have been to mobilize Black communities and allies nationwide. The NAACP, we fight for our community and we want to make sure that Black folks are made whole, but we are all a part of this American community and we want to make sure that all of our communities remain whole. We also want to elevate personal stories that reveal real life impact of these budget decisions. So you'll hear us talk about lifting up and telling your story. These stories matter. Numbers are great. $4.5 trillion. I don't even know what that looks like, but I know what it looks like to see a hungry child or to see an elder not being able to get the health care that they need because they don't have Medicaid, right? We also want to organize. So, some of you joined a town hall a call that we had last week, encouraging folks to go and have town halls in their community and have in-district meetings with their legislatures. This builds public pressure and makes sure that our legislators know that we are watching and we are holding them accountable. And finally, we're thinking about influence. We want to influence the fiscal year 2026 federal budget to prioritize things like equity and protect what we have earned. Say it in the chat for me. We want to protect what we have earned. All right, so let's talk about that arc of engagement. Again, we didn't get here overnight. Many of you have been on this journey with us back in August of 2024 when we started talking about Project 2025. And we said, no, we're not going to play on their playing field, right? We are going to flip the page and we're going to look at our 2025 and what is the future we want to build. We know that there was a playbook out there to dismantle all of the programs that we hold dear in our communities. And we said, not on our watch. We're going to make sure our community knows, and as they're going to vote, that they're aware of the choices that are being made. So we started at our 2025 back in August of 2024. We made sure folks knew about all of the things that were on the chopping block and the planned attacks on our communities. And now fast forward to present, we are in 2025 and that entire playbook is coming out to fruition. And so we started in March of this year with community calls to action. For our units and our members, we did all units trainings on budget power. And as early as last week, we had an all units call for mobilizing for in-district advocacy and town halls. All of these resources are still available on our website and through our advocacy team. So if this is something that you're interested in resourcing more, we'll definitely make sure you have it. But we also want to make sure that we highlight the key accomplishments in this work. You'll see this graphic here. Back in March 6th, we actually sent out an alert after the Senate made their first vote. And we said, hey, folks need to know how these people are voting, right? And so we let it be known that these senators voted against your interests. And we've been ringing that bell ever since. And you all have been in lockstep with us to make sure that we are making sure our communities know that action needs to be taken and that these leaders need to be held accountable. So we've reported on the Senate vote. We've done budget follow-up. We've had calls focused on Medicaid and veterans. And we've had calls for storytelling and comprehensive budget briefings. And finally, we've launched the American As messaging. This is a set of messaging and tools that have really helped us frame and ground this conversation, right? So we have a conversation around what are our American values? What do we as Americans hold as to be true? And as an American value, we believe in taking care of one each other. We believe that there should be safety nets for when you need them. These are not handouts, and I think we've been told a lot of lies and propaganda to make it feel like these are handouts. These are safety nets. These are insurances. When you think about Social Security, you think about the money that comes out of your check every month that pays into that system, right? We are owed this. And so we want to make sure that folks have a terminology and a framework to have these conversations, and that's our American As. And then finally, we've been doing these Bill Watch emergency calls. So you all are joining us. You joined us last night, you're here tonight, and we've continued to have these conversations, and we will continue watching and waiting and being guardians of our democracy with your help to make sure that we are stopping all of the harm that is coming out of this legislation. And so that is just a quick rundown of the work that we've done. It continues, and we ask that you stay in the fight with us and make sure that you're activating. Again, you'll hear about different ways that you can activate and create messages from our team, but I'm going to pass it back to Dominic as we transition.
Thank you so much for that, Phaedra, and really grounding us in the work that we have been doing since the beginning of last year, and then showing us that we are ready for this moment to continue the work that we're doing. We're going to now go for a full update on what is happening in real time on Capitol Hill, what is happening in the Senate, what is moving, where are we in this process. I know there's a lot of stuff happening, 500 amendments, 200 amendments happening. We have to go here. It's going back to the House. And so we're going to kick it over to our in-house experts on all things governmental affairs and policy, Patrice Willoughby and Cedric Haynes, to guide us on the updates of where we are in real time. Patrice, Cedric.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you again for joining us tonight. Um, as you know, the Vote-A-Rama, or this extensive list of amendments, is being discussed in the Senate right now. And, the opposition to this bill has really grown in that we have gone from 42 amendments on Saturday to over 500 that have been introduced and that are going through currently. So we know that at some point the debate is going to end, more than likely in the middle of the night. But the pressure that you all have been able to put on members of the Senate has been absolutely critical. This bill is bad, and it's not a Black issue. It's not just a white issue. It's an American issue. It affects everyone. And as we've been unpacking it as we go along, there are things that will affect every aspect of American society. My colleague Cedric will talk about some of the Medicaid provisions, but there are some really damaging provisions that are going to hurt the aspirational programs that have always helped us to move forward. It will cut Pell Grants and subsidies. It's going to raise the definition of full-time student from 12 to 15 hours. Now, many students take 12 hours because they need to work. It's also going to change the student loan repayment plan so you can't stop loan payments if you become unemployed. That's incredibly damaging. And with business development and small business, this administration has attacked the Minority Business Development Agency, and they're taking steps to undermine federal small business contracting goals, including for small and disadvantaged businesses, women-owned businesses, and veteran-owned businesses. This cuts across everyone. So it doesn't matter if, you don't get Medicaid, maybe you get your employee sponsored health care, but the restrictions in this bill are going to raise healthcare costs for everyone. And with the states and the Senate, the states that are most affected, we know that, for example, in SNAP, millions of children could lose their food assistance. 2.5 million people, children, seniors, and people with disabilities. In the Inflation Reduction Act, this provision in here, they're phasing out all the subsidies for solar and wind. And currently, 90% of that new capacity in electricity is renewable energy. That means that we're all getting some part of our electricity from renewables, and our energy costs are going to go up. So no matter where you fall, whether you are Black, white, Latin, Asian, middle income, or lower income, you are going to be affected by this bill. And that is why your participation is so important in pushing back on it. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Cedric Haynes right now for more info.
Thanks for that, Patrice. And I'm just going to pick up where you left off, speaking about Medicaid, and just say that, they're making people prove they're worthy of health care with some of the new work requirements. So think about a grandmother caring for grandchildren or a student working part-time, you could lose your coverage. But even if you were able to jump through all of the hoops and qualify, they're still cutting the funding that pays for Medicaid anyway. So the Congressional Budget Office analysis showed that this bill would leave 12 million more Americans without health insurance. Once you take this text and couple it with the cuts that are planned for the Affordable Care Act, that number jumps to 17 million people losing coverage. If all of the states that currently have Medicaid expansion ended due to certain amendments that have been filed, 29 million people across the country would lose their health coverage. And just keep in mind that 40% of children in small and rural towns receive their insurance from Medicaid. So this is a setup. You make it harder to qualify for these programs, and then you cut the money that you're going to provide for the programs anyway. And let's think about SNAP. They're expanding work requirements there as well. The work requirements go from a cap of age 54 to 64. You're adding more bureaucratic hurdles for people who need food assistance. At the same time, they're making states pay for SNAP for the first time in history, which is also a cut to the funding. So this is the largest cut to SNAP in history. It's going to get 30% of the program. The craziest part is that states could decide to end their programs entirely because they just can't afford the new costs. So they're going to institute more barriers for people that are trying to get help. And then for those who are able to get past all of that, when it comes to Medicaid and SNAP, they'll be providing less money and less resources for their help. Another statistic, 34 million kids depend on Medicaid, SNAP, or both. 34 million. That's almost half of the children in the entire United States, about 45%. And then we always hear this talk about the deficit, the debt ceiling, the country paying down its debts. Even Elon Musk today recognized that this legislation is going to blow up the deficit by $5 trillion. And for what? To give themselves room to borrow more money for permanent tax cuts to the wealthy while making folks who need help and everyday Americans pay by cutting their health care and their food assistance. Another record-setting act of policy violence, might I add. So they're going to borrow against our futures to make rich people richer today. It's not temporary. This is making them the tax cuts permanent, while the effects to our communities is going to be immediate. And this is an extension of trillions of dollars in corporate tax cuts. And to finish, I'll just say that, this isn't fiscal responsibility. I've been watching the floor, and I heard a number of times the words fiscal responsibility. This is a coordinated wealth transfer from the communities that need help the most to the folks that already have the most. So don't be distracted by the headlines. Every moment we have is a moment to inform ourselves, to inform our communities, and also inform our elected officials on our perspectives on how terrible and dangerous this bill really is for us. Who could you please put up the graphic of the states that stand the most to lose in a couple of key areas? I don't know who has it, but I'll read off some of these while we wait for that to come up. So think about this. These states have the highest Medicaid recipients. Louisiana, West Virginia, thank you. Louisiana, West Virginia, Kentucky, Arkansas, Alaska, Montana. You're going to notice a lot of overlap here. States with the highest SNAP recipients: Louisiana, West Virginia, Oklahoma, Alabama, North Carolina. And states with the highest investments from the Inflation Reduction Act, which Patrice explained at the end of her remarks: South Carolina, Ohio, Tennessee, North Carolina, Indiana, and Oklahoma. So please use this information. It is really, really, really critical that we lift up our voices to the elected officials, the senators who represent these states, which are also listed in the slide that is up right now. So I will turn it back to Patrice if she has anything to add there. And if not, we will turn it back to Dom.
Like I said, this is not a black or a white issue. It's an American issue. You see Montana on there. You see Alaska on there. This is an issue, and these senators that are supporting this bill need to be held accountable for all of the constituents that they represent, because they are doing this under cover of night, thinking that there is no pushback. And your engagement has been really the key in drawing this debate out and drawing attention to the harm that's going to be caused to the American people. I'll turn it back over to Dominic.
Thank you so much for that, Patrice and Cedric, for giving us all things updates of what's happening on Capitol Hill, but most importantly, how detrimental this bill, if passed, will be to communities across America. To your point, Patrice, it's not a black and white issue. It is truly an American issue. It is all about our livelihood. And so how do we talk about that? And how do we engage? And on last evening, our comms team shared with us some messaging briefs and talking points overall around what that looks like. I'm going to kick it over to Dominic Hawkins, our Vice President of Communications, who's going to go a little deeper this evening on the toolkits and how you all can begin to share this information and talk about this information as you're engaging directly with your senators and/or constituents in your communities. Dominic.
Thank you so much, Dominic, and good evening, everyone. I'm Dominic Hawkins, VP of Communications here at NAACP, and so just bear with me as I share my screen real quick. Okay. So as Dom Whitehead mentioned, today we're going to go over this American As toolkit. So you may have seen this previously, as Phaedra mentioned, when we kicked off this campaign back in March. But now we've updated it with the most recent language that my colleague Trevon went over yesterday. And so, as we just heard from the policy team, this is one of the worst budget bills ever, basically. It's not only seeking to cut Medicaid and healthcare for 17 million people. It would gut SNAP benefits, cutting SNAP benefits by a third. And also, as President Johnson mentioned, seek to reshape the role of government, taking resources from the public, basically having public dollars to basically go to improving the public and to instead enrich the already wealthy. So all we basically were seeing is that this is just one of the worst bills we've ever seen in terms of government funding. So one thing that's actually really interesting is that all the money that's proposed being cut for Medicaid, that's about $930 billion. Coincidentally, that's almost the amount of money that this bill would give in corporate tax breaks, and 910 billion. So they're basically taking money out of Medicaid and putting it just to give corporations and billionaires tax breaks, which is absolutely un-American. And so that's why, as we've been saying, this is not a black and white issue. This is a red, white, and blue issue. This is about all of us as Americans. And so this toolkit will give you exactly what you need to be able to tell that message to your neighbors, your friends, and basically tell your senator to vote no on this un-American, disastrous budget. So as we've been putting in the Zoom chat tonight, we have hashtag as American As. If you click this link, it'll take you to the same website where you can take action, where you can contact your senator and tell them to vote no. You can call them. You can send them an email. We've had hundreds of calls so far, thousands of emails sent. And so just keep up the good work. We want to see those numbers increase over the next couple of days and really turn up the heat and telling all of our senators that we're not going to accept this un-American budget. So when you do get a hold of your senators, you can call them with this number on the switchboard. And if you do get a hold of them, introduce yourself, say where you are living, and ask to get to that particular Senate's office. Again, this is all in the toolkit, which we'll share in the links throughout the chat. But once you're on the phone with them, if you're able to reach them, tell them to vote no on the budget. Tell them why it's important to you. I saw in the chat earlier that one person said that they were receiving SNAP benefits, they're receiving Medicaid benefits. Tell that story. Tell them how this bill would affect you, right? So we have to let our senators know that their constituents are watching and that we are going to remember this when it's time to vote in 2026. So you better make sure you're voting correct. And so let's say you don't get them. Make sure to leave them an email. A voicemail. Let them know exactly who you are again and why you believe this bill will be harmful, and tell them just to vote no on this. Just absolutely not. We're not having it. Tell them to vote no. And so, what do you do if you aren't able to reach them? And you aren't able to leave a voicemail? Try again later. We know that about 64% of Americans disagree with this budget, right? And so 64% of Americans are probably calling, emailing, doing the same thing, but we have to keep up that pressure. We have to keep up that heat to make sure that these senators know that this bill is not going to be of interest to the American people. So try again later. Try calling them directly. You can also email them a comment on our website. You can go directly to your senator's website and email them, leave them a comment. And then, of course, you can also post on social media. So this is an example graphic that we've used, and we also have some graphics. You can go to our NAACP Instagram page, and you can share what we've currently posted. Those links can be made available in the chat as well. And then we'll also have some sample graphics for you. But essentially, you want to post and talk about about how Medicaid is going to be cut, how SNAP benefits are going to be cut, how this is going to hurt most vulnerable communities, right? And so talk about our grandparents' health, the food for our families and our children, right? And so these are the lifelines for our nation. These aren't entitlements, as Phaedra mentioned. These are things that we've paid for, right? And so we need to make sure that that whatever budget is passed is going to protect our social safety nets and not jeopardize them. And so once you've called your senator, emailed your congressperson, share it with your friends. Say that you've contacted your senators, right? Let people bandwagon on and share what you've done. Share that you're being active civically and you're being active for your community, so you can encourage other people to do the same thing. And you can even tag your senator in a social media post, tag them and with the post the graphics and tag them and say that this budget is going to leave everyday Americans behind. Let them know that we deserve Medicaid, we deserve Medicare, we deserve healthcare coverage, we deserve SNAP benefits for those who need it, right? We deserve our social safety nets, and we will not see the money that we've paid into go to just give billionaires another tax break. So go ahead, you can even feel free to share your own messages. Make sure to use the hashtag as American as hashtag on your social media posts. Follow NAACP on Instagram, on X, formerly known as Twitter, on LinkedIn or Facebook, what have you. And just make sure you share your contact, our content, or what have you, all across your personal or organizational accounts. And again, in this toolkit, it'll have all the links you need. You can download the graphics here, and you can go ahead and again click the link to take you to the website, which has the call to action page. So again, thank you so much. I really appreciate your attention to this matter. And if you have any questions, feel free to email communications@naacpnet.org. Thank you, Dom. Back to you.
Thank you so much for that, Dominic. And someone just wrote in the chat, do we supposed to tag Republicans as well? Absolutely. We have no permanent friends, no permanent enemies. We have just permanent interests, as Patrice and team just laid out, as Phaedra and team just laid out. We are all about the interests of our folks and making sure we get the best policies that we need. So tag them all, tag them all. I'm going to kick it over now to Phaedra and Erica. I know we may have a few questions that happened in the chat, a few in the Q&A, but some questions and answers, some Q&A overall around this information that was shared. And to Dominic, everything that he just placed in the chat, make sure we're utilizing those resources. So team members have put those resources in the chat and those links, and we'll push that information back out. Phaedra?
Thanks, Dominic. Yeah, so feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A. We are gonna answer some of them. We've answered them in real time, but I think they're important for other folks to see them. So someone asked, has the NAACP contacted Senators Murkowski and Collins, along with major corporations that contribute to them, such as LL Bean for Collins and Trident Seafoods for Murkowski? So I'm going to go to our policy team. I'm going to ask this question, but I'm also going to raise a question that I've heard from other folks before, which is, this is a great organizing question. And are there other sectors that are being impacted by this legislation that we should think about organizing as well?
Hey, Phaedra, you kicked this to the policy team?
Yes.
Got it. So I will say that you should know that we are always in contact with Congress, the House of Representatives, the U.S. Senate, both directly to convey our interests, but also collectively in coalition with a number of groups and organizations, including other civil rights organizations. So I will say a definite yes there. And then I will also add that we also, with the help of Phaedra's team, conduct advocacy when issues pop up in states as well. So it's not just the U.S. House and the Senate right now. At this time, it is on these specific issues, but also we advocate to state houses as well on these issues.
So I also want to add, the goal of these calls is for our members in Alaska to call Senator Murkowski. It's not enough for the national office, or staff. Members of the Senate need to hear from you, the constituents. And so that's why we're doing this, to keep you as informed as possible, and you make the call. It is more valuable to elected officials. It is more important that every member have their voices heard by their senator. And so on yesterday, we had over 6,500 people to send emails, over 700 plus calls to go in today from members who live in the state that we outlined. And so let's continue to do that. Even if your member is voting the right way, call them anyway. Call everybody so our voices can be heard.
Thanks, President Johnson. Another question that we heard was around myths that are coming out or falsehoods that are being spread by corporations. Someone cited, Uber saying this is a great thing because now our drivers won't have to pay taxes. And I'm wondering if our policy team can kind of parse through what that actually means and how we can kind of debunk some of these myths.
Um, well, I didn't see the Uber quote itself, but there has been a provision in the bill that's called no taxes on tips. However, the way that it is structured, it would be no taxes on tips that I think come through um, uh, like hard currency, which really eliminates a lot of the benefit of that provision. And so, without knowing more about what Uber said, I can't really address that. What I can address is that the benefit, in terms of the way that this tax cut is skewed, it's going to drive the greatest benefit to really the top 1,000 people who live in a 300 million member country. And so that is, the billionaires, the multi millionaires, and the billionaires who will derive the best benefit, the most benefit from having their tax cut, I think on an average of $600,000. Whereas the lowest quartile of the people who are working, lower and middle class people, will derive around $300. So, comparatively speaking, that, is what's called regressive tax policy, in that it is unfair in giving the greatest benefit to the people who have the most money.
Thank you, Patrice. I'm gonna bring in the rest of the advocacy team who are also fielding questions. Wisdom, Corey, can you share questions that you're getting?
Yeah, absolutely. One question that we have is what frames have proven most effective in messaging to conservative or undecided legislators on budget cuts?
So I'll just answer that. There is no single message. What we have found as Senate members realize the impact it's going to have on their state, they're beginning to respond. Senator Tillis on yesterday from North Carolina, recognized that he had not been provided accurate information as it relates to the individuals who will be impacted in terms of Medicaid. And what's really taking place here, it is a slow death of the Affordable Care Act. It will remove people from Medicaid coverage. You think of Medicaid, you think of one concept, but if you talk about Affordable Care Act, it's nothing but Medicaid. And so now that Americans are experiencing coverage in all but 9 states, more people have interest in keeping the program intact. And what they were receiving was false information when in fact, after the bill was scored, it's realizing, for example, in North Carolina, his state, close to 700,000 people will be kicked off the Medicaid rolls. Well, that was a problem for him, causing him to have a reaction yesterday on the Senate floor. I think more of that would take place if we continue to push the conversation to expose what's happening. Over the last 2.5 weeks, we have been distracted by things such as a fight with Elon Musk, ICE raids, bombing of Iraq. All these things are distractions as this bill was moving through the process. And I think it was intentional so people wouldn't zero in on the true harm it's going to have on individuals. It is truly policy violence. And so we have to keep pushing, exposing the harm it's going to have so we can get senators to rethink their vote and vote no.
And I mean, I'll add a little bit about rural hospitals because, some of the context is that there were efforts to end the Affordable Care Act, hundreds of votes that were taken, and folks in Congress were never able to eliminate the Affordable Care Act. But there's a thing called provider taxes that sends money back to hospitals for providing care
I'm gonna
for
try and
people.
extend my monitor to you to see if you can see it.
Hello?
Free care for people. This bill reduces those taxes, which is going to really constrain hospital budgets. That will cause them to pull back on the care that they are able to give to people. And this is sort of a backdoor way that this bill has been structured in order to remove the incentive for hospitals and states to participate in the Affordable Care Act through the Medicaid program. Um, and that's another point of vulnerability because it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you on, the states know, the state governments, the governors know that money in those states that have expanded Medicaid, that is very helpful for them being able to provide health care.
Thank you so much, Patrice. And I do see that we have a special guest who has joined, and so we're going to pause our Q&A and transition into our special guest. We'd like to have a conversation with President Johnson and Joy Reid.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all having me. Apologies for a little bit of technical difficulties on our end getting into the Zoom, but thank you all for all of the work that you're doing to try to combat this bill. And I guess my first question that I would throw out to you, Derek, is what is the plan? Just to put it very simply, what is the plan? We know the vote-a-rama is going on right now. We're getting reports from Mark Thompson from in front of Congress that they are working on trying to get amendments to slow the bill down. But what's the plan on the NAACP side?
But the plan is to get more people to call their senator to tell them to vote no. The unfortunate part of what has happened over the last 2 weeks is intentional distraction. Bombing of Iraq, the ICE raids, all the things to distract the American public to understand the policy violence that this bill would impose on everyday citizens. This is not a Black issue, it's not a white issue. It is an issue of policies that would take things from people. So we're asking people to call. This morning, when we did the tally, over 6,500 of our members had already emailed based on the call last night. Over 800 calls have been made. So we have to continue this momentum as they continue to introduce more amendments to slow the process down so people are aware of what's really taking place.
Right. And, we talked a little bit about earlier on my show, the fact that this was done when it came to Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. The Republicans, used various tactics to slow that bill down and to actually change the bill and alter the way it looked in the end. It wasn't the bill that it started out with in the House. Do you see an opportunity here through the use of amendments in this vote-a-rama to try to at least alter some of the provisions in the bill?
Well, some of the provisions have already been altered with the bird bath. And so as we continue to push, more components of the bill get exposed. I hope that there'll be more Senator Tillis to say, wait a minute, I was lied to. that it will impact over 700,000 people in North Carolina and their benefits. And in essence, the longer this thing is out there, the more people wake up to the realization this is not about the others, the immigrants, the blacks, the women, the you name it. This is about my Social Security, about my Medicaid, about the social safety net that I have grown accustomed to. So the more we slow it down, the greater the likelihood we can alter a bad bill. It's still going to be bad no matter what passes, but at least we could take some of the worst stuff out.
And let's talk a little bit about that because for a lot of people, there's a lot of polling that shows that most Americans are not aware that this is happening at all. And even if it is happening, there's a misbelief that the only people who are going to be cut off of Medicaid are people who are undocumented, quote unquote, illegal people. But that is, first of all, not true because undocumented immigrants can't get Medicaid.
Right.
What do you think that we can do to combat some of the disinformation because it's causing a lot of people to not pay attention?
As we talked earlier, we need to put Senator Tillis's comments on the loop because he really exposed what was taking place. He wasn't talking about 700,000 immigrants in North Carolina losing. He was talking about white North Carolinians losing it because that's who he see. He doesn't see us in the mirror. He doesn't see other people in the mirror. He see his reflection in the mirror. And so the more we push and talk about this, I'm hoping people will have the aha moment. Unfortunately, in this country, the tool of othering is almost like an intoxicant. White folks are the most brainwashed community that in the country because they think it's always about the other people, not realizing public policy isn't race specific. It's about all of us. It's about our tax dollars, how it is leveraged to ensure quality of life or to enrich the already wealthy. And we're saying that it should improve everyone's quality of life and not to enrich the most wealthiest individuals on the globe.
Do you think that some of the visuals that we've seen this week, I mean, Oprah and Gail and, Usher and Ivanka Trump and the Kardashians all gathering in Venice for a very, very lavish wedding, $52 million wedding, when most Americans can't put together $52 half the time. And Zohran Mamdani winning in New York, vowing to make bus rides free and make rent cheaper and create city-owned grocery stores. The contrast in those messages, do you think that people are finally starting to wake up to say, wait a minute, the billionaire class really is taking us for a ride?
I hope so. It's always the best of times and worst of times. It's the best of times because we have so many platforms where we can have freedom of speech. We can monitor what's taking place. It's the worst of time because we're gravitating towards the shiny things, which takes us back to a gilded age where people are struggling to pay house rent or the level of food insecurity has risen while we are looking at these lavish weddings. At some point, I think we all need to sober up to the fact that the extremes will demolish the democracy that we currently have, and that we need to replenish and rebuild a middle class so we don't have the extremes that is on display, whether you are talking about poor people in Kentucky or this wedding that we witnessed on social media and on broadcast television.
It reminds me a little bit of the 1980s. You're probably too young to remember the 1980s there, but I am old enough to remember it. I was in high school at the time. And there was this kind of dichotomy where Ronald Reagan was cutting welfare, quote unquote, cutting people off of food assistance, making life harder for Americans, making people poorer, while at the same time, Americans were watching lifestyles of the rich and famous in Dallas and Dynasty and sort of living vicariously through fictional rich people. Including Donald Trump, who was not a billionaire at the time, but people thought he was and thought he was rich. Do you think that in some ways we are too distractible as a people? And in this case, the distractions are not just rich people having weddings. It's ICE raids. It's torture essentially of brown people and chasing them down the street. And it's, as you said, bombing Iran and what's being done to Gaza.
Thank you for saying I wasn't old enough to be in the 80s. I tell people I'm 38 and I'm holding strong. In the 80s, I grew up in Detroit. I witnessed people being gainfully employed. The auto industry was booming until it was massive layoff and drugs raided our community. And people were distracted with images on television, not recognizing that the trickle-down economics that Reagan was pushing was actually destroying communities and really removing the American dream from individuals as he attacked labor unions, as they flooded Black communities with drugs, as white individuals drunk the Kool-Aid of white supremacy. You've seen the rise in hate towards Asian community, Black community. This is something that we should not go back to because we've seen it before. The voodoo economics that they're trying to implement currently is very reminiscent of what they did with Reagan, what they did in Chile with Pinochet, what they attempted in other areas through the Chicago Boys. None of it has ever worked. It has always enriched the most wealthiest individuals in the country and caused more poverty and despair across the country, especially in working class white communities.
Yeah, and I should mention, and I mentioned Gaza in that group, and that is not a distraction. That is something they're doing while we're distracted, committing genocide with our money in Gaza. So I should correct that. What do you think that we can do just in our own personal communities to try to fight back? Because people feel overwhelmed. I'm sure you have family members and friends who say, I'm exhausted, I'm tired. We did our part in November. We're not sure that this is our fight. How do we get people to get off the couch and fight?
You know, I live in Mississippi from Detroit, but freedom is a constant struggle. And that's what civil rights veterans will always say, that freedom is a constant struggle. The transaction of an election is an occurrence, but we always have to continue to build. The reason why this is important for the NAACP now and the Black community is not whether or not the bill is going to pass, good or bad, it's our engagement from this point and then look forward. The mis and disinformation about what Trump was going to do in terms of stimmy checks and the better for Black males and all that stuff, we have to dispel that. And the only way we dispel that is getting more of our folks engaged in these type activities so they can see what's really taking place, to be the true ambassadors in their communities and begin to encourage, educate, and engage more of our folks. That election may have been lost that in November, but there's more fight for us to do, because once we win it, we got to protect it. Once we are able to protect it, we got to grow it. But if we lose it, it's the fight to get it back, to grow it all over again.
The young and fresh Derek Johnson, president of the National NAACP, an organization that has been fighting from Medgar Evers on to try to make this country better. Thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody, and I will see you guys on the next Zoom. Bye-bye.
Dom, back to you.
All right, all right. Thank you for that, Joy and President Johnson. Thank you for the Q&A. We're just about at time. So we're going to kick it directly over to Mr. Tyler Sterling, our National Campaigns Director. We cannot have folks leave without a true call to action. And we just had an amazing conversation between President Johnson and Joy Reid on all the things and what do we need to do in this moment. So Tyler, it is on you to tell folks what do we need to do in this moment.
Thank you very much, Dominic, and good evening, everyone. My name is Tyler Sterling. I am the National Campaigns Director here at the NAACP. We've had a lot of information thrown at us today. We've had a lot of really intelligent folks talking about what is going to happen with the impacts of this budget bill. We've had the political implications. We had a historical context from President Johnson, really referring to or discussing this transformation of wealth, or this transfer of wealth and the transformation of how our government works and operates for us. What you can do in this exact moment is going to be our call to action. And so I'm going to ask every single person on this call to text the word power to 20707. Again, that is texting the word power to 20707. Before I even get to what happens there, you may be saying, well, Tyler, I don't have a smartphone. I got a simple phone. I don't get links sent back to me. We've got links in our toolkits that have been dropped and links in to take this action. But our first step is going to be, I'm going to ask you, if you've got a smartphone, we're going to text the word power to 20707. What will happen after that instance? You're going to get a text back to your phone, or text back with a link. You're going to click on that link to take you directly to our calling tool. From that tool there, you will then enter in your personal information of address. The address is key piece here. President Johnson hit the nail on the head in that we want to make sure you are contacting your senators. Senators need to hear from constituents. They need to hear from registered voters to ensure that they are talking to the right folks and they're going to listen to you a bit more. Take that to credit, take that to heart a bit more if you are contacting senators that you are currently a constituent of. So that call to action, we're texting the word power to 20707. We're getting the link sent back to us. We're clicking on that link and entering in our name and our address to confirm that we are a constituent in this state. From there, we are then making our calls, and our scripts are found. You can find talking points on that link that'll get sent back to you, talking points in the toolkit. But really, we want to make sure it is a simple, effective message as to why you believe your senators should vote no on the issue. Questions were asked about what if I know my senator is going to vote in the right side of history or make the right decision here? Still make that call. This is about impact and receipts. We need to keep the receipts to say how many calls were made, how many senators were reached out to. Your senators, if they are pro and in support of this bill, will also use that on the floor debates and in future discussions to say, I had X number of constituents call my office in opposition of this bill. So we need to make sure that we are calling no matter where we know, no matter if we know where our senators are standing or if we think they're on the fence. We are calling all of our senators. And that message is going to be very simple. My message would be, I'm calling my senators and I'm saying, I need you to vote no on the big ugly bill because 11.8 million people are at risk of losing their health care. And I don't think people should be losing their health care while we are lining the pockets of billionaires. A simple and effective message with talking points found on our website, found in the links dropped into the chat, and also found in the body of that call tool. So we're going to make sure that we are calling both of our senators. I also saw a question in the chat regards of what if we're calling late at night and we're calling right now. We need you to call right now so we can have those voicemails loaded. I have been an intern on the Hill. I've been a staffer on the Hill. I've read those, listened to those voicemails. I've taken those notes. I've provided them to the LDs, to the chief of staff, to the member themselves. The calls get answered, but it is particular to say that you are a resident of a resident and a registered voter in the state and that you're going to be watching them after. So it's not enough to say, I need you to vote no. I need you to vote no, your reason why, and that also we will be following up or I'll be watching where your vote is. What we will also be doing during the day on July 2nd at 3 to 4 p.m., we're going to have a power hour. That is Wednesday. So not tomorrow, but just Wednesday. We're going to have a power hour from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern time where we are calling folks in real time as well, likely being able to get in touch with a staffer or maybe not. These lines are being flooded right now. Regardless, we're going to continue to keep that drumbeat up of contacting your senators via phone call, via email, and social media. Those are our top three tactics at this exact point in time to continue hitting that drumbeat and raising awareness and holding our senators accountable. And so with that, I will kick our call back to Mr. Dominic Whitehead to close us out.
Thank you so much for that, Tyler, and giving us that call to action. We are right at 9 o'clock this evening. Again, folks should text power to 20707. I want to see President Johnson. Do you have any final remarks before we close out this evening?
No, have a great evening, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you all.